I see that the audience is starting to join the conference room, the attendees room. So good afternoon, good evening, or even good morning, wherever it is that you're joining from. Yeah, welcome to the launch of issue 49 of Afterall, which is our latest issue, obviously, which I'm holding in my hands for the first time since this advanced copy has just been delivered to my place this morning, just in time for the launch. For those of you who were really eager to read Afterall during this pandemic, I would like to let you know that distribution for the UK, for Europe, Asia has resumed, so it should be available very soon. Unfortunately for our American readers, due to further mail disruptions in America, this is on hold for a few more couple of weeks, but it will be available very soon. So it is my pleasure to host Hyunjin Kim, who will take us through the essay that she has written for this issue on the work of siren and jung, entitled Anomalous Tradition, Queer Enchantment, on the work of siren and jung, which I'm showing you the opening page here. This event is in collaboration with the Korean Cultural Center in London, KCC UK, and I will be joined by Jaemin Cha as a co-discussant today. Just say a few words to introduce Hyunjin. So Hyunjin Kim is a curator, writer, and she's currently the CADI's lead curator for Asia. She was the curator of the Korean Pavilion at last year's Venice Biennale, which featured the work of siren and jung. And before that, she has held role as the director of the Arco Art Center in Seoul from 2014 to 2015. And she was a co-curator of the 7th Gwangju Biennale in 2008. And my co-panelist, Jaemin Cha, is the curator of visual arts at KCC UK in London, where she has been working since 2017. And since 2018, she's in charge of the visual arts exhibition program and its curation. So before we move into the presentation and the conversation, I just say a few words about this latest issue, which has on its cover a detail from a work by the Indian artist Amar Kanwar. So Amar Kanwar is the subject of two in-depth texts, one by Afterall editor Utemeta Bauer and former editor Anka Rujoyu. And there's also a second text by the Indian environmental activist Usha Ramanathan. And this is part of a larger thematic thread running through the issue, which has as a subtitle Extractivism. So the rest of this section is composed of essays on the work of Carolina Caicedo and her project Be Damned. There's also an essay on the work by Paulo Tavares and Ursula Biman Forest Law, and we also had the pleasure to host an artist insert by Cooking Sections, as well as an essay on their work. So all these articles form the part dedicated to environmental issues and how they are appropriated and engaged with by contemporary artists, and some of which explicitly deal with this notion of extractivist capitalism. There's a second main thread that runs through this issue 49, and that's through the work of artists who are occupying in some alternative ways different spaces, be they the spaces of art history, social and cultural history, or even economics. And in this section, we have two essays on the work of Sonia Boyce, who is due to represent the UK at the Venice Biennale, which has been postponed to 2022. And we have two essays on siren, on the work of siren and jung, one of which is Hyunjin's, of course, and the second one by the New York-based performance studies scholar Ashley Chang, who for professional reasons could not join us today, unfortunately. Just a few last practical points regarding issue 49. We have made available a few texts in open access on the website of our distributor, the University of Chicago Press, where you can also buy the issue and subscribe to Afterall. We'd be happy to post a link in the chat box for anyone's interested. Oh, sorry. Yes. And so Hyunjin's essay has been made available. Available. So I hope that everyone had a chance to read it before before today's presentation. In any case, you will be able to catch up afterwards if necessary. And also, please note that the event is being recorded. So by joining the talk, you have agreed in principle to be recorded. And I think, yes, so the way we're going to proceed, Hyunjin will give her presentation for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. This will be followed by comments and responses by Jaemin and then myself, and we'll open the floor, so to say, to interact and converse with members of the audience. And I would like to invite you to use the Q&A box to ask your questions. The chat box can be used for any other comments. Although you are not able to see her, all of this wouldn't have been possible without the help of my wonderful colleague, Lauren Holton, who's the project manager at Afterall and who's actually behind the control room of our Zoom webinar. I think that's it. So I think we can leave the floor for Hyunjin, and we're really looking forward to hearing you and discussing the amazing work of siren afterwards with you and the audience. So over to you, Hyunjin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adeena. Hello, everyone. Well, my text, Anomalous Tradition and Pure Enchantment, was commissioned by Afterall for this issue, and but it has more the overall introductory of the siren Eunyoung, artist siren Eunyoung Chung. It's somehow commissioned as such because there was another author would bring an in-depth pure discourse arguments together with the siren's work, but it somehow we need a certain kind of dimension to approach the artist's overall practice to understand. So, but we're missing another author today, and I would handle another part that I've been written for the catalog with the Korean Pavilion, Venice Biennale. So there will be a little more chance to bring a certain discursive argument around the queer assemblage, which artists and I got influence from the jazz sphere K4. So, but based on the text of the Afterall, I will use the PPT presentation to show some of the images of the work of the artist and then reading partly from the text. Before going to the text, I would like to introduce a little bit about my exhibition, which commissioned Siren Eun Chung's most recent work, performing by flash after image velocity and noise. Um, well, this exhibition, obviously, it's for the Korean Pavilion at Venice Biennale 2019, but it explored the history of the modernization in East Asia through the lens of gender and the agency of tradition. It was questioning the canon of the heterosexual male as much as the West. This is also the argument over the many boundaries and border of the modernity that are carved into today's aporia. In particular, and it's a critical understanding of the problems of the modernization process in Asia. The exhibition was investigating how tradition was invented and generated, and seeks some kind of a new potential of the tradition in Asia out of the patriarchal pressure. Um, so, but also very much through a perception of gender complexity that goes beyond the canon of modernity. So this exhibition was presenting three artists. First one is a Hwayeon Nam, and the second was a Siren in Yeongchang, and then the third was Jaemin Cha. Well, Hwayeon's work was about the 20th century choreographer and dancer Choi Seung-hee, who embraced the grand ambition for East Asian dance and constantly collided with the modern border as she generated a modern invention while struggling with the ideology or notion of nation. Well, she was a figure of Asian diva in early 20th century, but seen as a Japanese collabo, but also ended up North Korea as a communist. Very still quite controversial figure in South Korea. But the artist was sort of want to invest kind of a singularity when she was the image in the East Asian dance, and that go beyond, that could be come up as a kind of sort of contemporary event in terms of contemporary art. And Siren has been researched a long time, over 10 years, on Yeoseong Gukgeuk, which is which is fast-waning genre of Korean traditional theater that features only women actors. So we're going to see lots of the archival images of Yeoseong Gukgeuk today. So together with the text that I'm introduced, what's the history of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk and how it come up, important resource for the artist Siren and Yeongchang. And she has three-sided wall video installation that seemingly not really close to the what Yeoseong Gukgeuk shows, but it has a very much imaginative genealogy of the queer performance that comes from the Yeoseong Gukgeuk to the contemporary four different performers, gender queer performers. So, and the last artist, Jaemin Cha, she interprets the Pari myth, the Korean old Asian myth Pari, as a new potential of the escaping border and separation as a liminality interrupting the West colonial modern. When a Pari becomes a notion, from the story of the daughter who was ousted from her community, so she was abandoned by the region. She's the daughter, she's a girl, the seventh girl. So, and the artists bring not a portrait of Pari, but it's to become a pure discursive notion in her lengthy video film. So in these three artist traditions serve as a significant medium throughout the process of digging into researching, discovering, rethinking, and finally interrupting the modality of the East Asian modernization. This is overall the exhibition, um, how it would be. And I I can show you the short clip of the exhibition. The scene is actually from the exhibition at Arco Art Center, uh, which is a traveling show from the Venice Korean Pavilion. It just finished. It was just over last Sunday. Uh, it got really shortened because of the COVID situation, so we could only have a 3 weeks and half presentations. Um, Only half of the period of the whole exhibition. But the Museum Archive Center, they made this video documentation. It's about like 3-4 minutes. So I'm happy to show here and share it with you.
이리 오너라. 우리 사랑가로 한번 즐겨보자. 사랑 네 사랑 내 사랑이지야.
나한테서 주는 걸 가져오는 것이에요. 어떤 분리된 세계는 그것을 품고 있었다가 이긴 자리가 있고 그 기분 걱정은 안물려지지 못하게 되었던 상태이기도 하는 그런 이중적인 자리에 있는 것입니다.
Um, the because of the duration of each video, actually it took like slightly more than 2 hours to finish whole exhibition. So we have just really uh, glimpse of the exhibition now. Okay. Anomalous tradition, pure enchantment on the work of siren and Yeoseong. We just watched the short clip of the exhibition, and then the second work with 3 monitor of the Korean traditional costumed male-looking actually person danced and performed that connects into this U-shaped war U-shaped box. It has like a 5 by 5 and by 4 meter scale of the wall. The charge with the beats in with light circulate like laser beams across the 3 walls. That's the Siren Eunyoung-jeong's the work performing by flash after image, velocity, and noise. I have a full length of the documentation, but it's rather go to move for the reading of the text. I'm going to read the right column of the page 49. If you have the text with you, please go to the middle of the right columns of page 49. Installed at the entry to the Korean Pavilion, the 3 monitors that make up the first part of the performing by flash after image, velocity, and noise show Yeoseong Gukgeuk after Lee Dong-woo dancing solo, performing pansori, and putting on makeup in large theater. The actress' traditional Korean men's costume shown across the monitor and the immersive experience provided by the electronic music are somewhat heterogeneous, seemingly not only unrelated but almost diametrically opposed. What bridges them within this context is a queer performance. Here, the artists summon and reaffirm Yeoseong Gukgeuk as a forerunner of a queer performances. On view is a contemporary aesthetic of the anomalousness, which establishes Yeoseong Gukgeuk as the imagery origin of a modern and historical queer genealogy. In this work, as well as in her latest, including Anomalous Fantasy, Siren and Yeoseong articulate genderqueer anomaly in the form of uneven, unconventional, and anomalous acts and movements. Celebrated by the artists for their aesthetic singularity, the aesthetics and politics of the contemporary queer performances are taken from the restricted shape and sphere of the LGBTQI community to the stage of official or established performing art. I'm a bit skipping to explain the detail of this work now because I would have another chance later on to go a little bit deeper of this work. A university student in 1990s, Siren Eunyoung Chung belongs to a generation who grew up under the influence of campus feminism in South Korea. Since her earliest work, she has attempted to expand feminist language in contemporary art. Though narrative reminiscent of the video essay, her early pieces addressed issues including social violence and oppression inflicted on female others and their vulnerability as they were ceaselessly pushed out of the society. Having brought about some change, feminism in South Korea lost its driving force and dwindled in 2000s. It nevertheless continued to be a personal concern for the artist, serving as an important resource and impetus for her work. Encountering aged Yeoseong Gukgeuk actor by chance and beginning to exchange with them around 2008, she initiated the substantial Yeoseong Gukgeuk project based on a decade of ethnographic research that approached tradition from the perspective of subversive gender performativity. So this is the Yeoseong Gukgeuk community picture that she could borrow from the first, second generation performers archive, their own, their personal belongings actually. A form of musical dance theater begun in the later half of the 1940s, Yeoseong Gukgeuk enjoyed great popularity in the 1950s after the Korean War. Formerly, it is viewed as an offshoot of the changguk, the theatrical staging of the traditional Korean solo vocal performance genre called pansori. However, just as it means Korean National Women Theater, in Yeoseong Gukgeuk, female actors play all of the roles. It can thus be seen as the opposite version of traditional Chinese opera, which consists of the all male actors. A flower in jail. This is the image of the flower in jail poster, staged in 1948 by the Women's Gukgeuk Association, initiated Yeoseong Gukgeuk. So this theater was become a chance to initiate the Yeoseong Gukgeuk. And the poster already says it is national opera, only female and women perform. It came out of the women's determination to create their own stage, their antipathy toward the authoritarianism and violence of the male artists, and their will to fight back against the prolonged sexual and monetary exploitation of the female student by the male master in their training, an apparent system of oral transmission that predominates in the traditional Korean music circles. In spite of the hostile environment, women's awareness expanded during the modernization process. Although the very first Yeoseong Gukgeuk performance went unnoticed, the genre won great popularity in the 1950s and continued clandestinely when, due to the war, the theater company was evacuated elsewhere. After the ceasefire, Yeoseong Gukgeuk fostered popular fantasy, allowed the public to forget the pain of the war, yielding unprecedentedly large fandom. From the 1960s onward, Yeoseong Gukgeuk declined as a dictatorial regime, implemented projects to the nationalized or officialized tradition involving male musicians, excluding it from the institutional support. It also fell behind amidst the influx of the cinema and form of Western theater and a performance into the South Korea. But even though the institution failed to train new generation of actors, the experience of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk for women in the 1950s was beyond a mere escape from the patriarchal society. This is the quote from the memo written by artist Siren and Young. Yeoseong Gukgeuk provided women with the positive experience in being outside at a time when women could not venture beyond the confine of the home. Against the gender norm in early modern East Asia that saw women outside the home as a potential threat to the public model, Yeoseong Gukgeuk showed that it was possible for women to perform activities on their own and to create a same-sex community that produced a sense of belonging and commitment for women. Yeoseong Gukgeuk is thus primarily reminiscent of the modern female subject, who allow for a glimpse into the subjectivity and the realization of woman-centered activities. Furthermore, over the past decade of the genre has unceasingly provided a new inspiration for Siren and Yeongchong, who has treated its engagement with genderqueer as epistemology as an unexplored and evolving multifarious organism. What she has found most fascinating are the aged actors who have become a living monument for the queer community. Behind such fascination is a revelating awareness of gender from an open and non-normative same-sex community as found inside of the ambiguous, complex, and transgressive Yeoseong Gukgeuk. Based on a material, transcript, and video recording acquired through a long-term exchange with the elderly actor, Siren Young-chong has presented visual archive in an installation such as a public yet private archive and lecture performance such as Gender Bender Fencer in 2014 at Archive Center and in 2017 at Hakabe Berlin. These archive images, the photographs, it was taken from the performance scene, but also, as you see, there's a picture taken between a performer and their fan, and there's some sort of huge fandom around this community, and often they have a certain kind of lesbian relationship, which is sort of fantasies around this theater performance too. These images are public yet private archive. She was shown as exhibition. Within these archives, her interpretation intervened in an intimate account based on the actor's oral testimonies of the photographs of the simulated wedding between Nima, that means lead male actor, and a female fan, and images of actors impersonating characters who are blind in one eye or staging sword fights. In so doing, she invited the audience into vivid scene of homosocial intimacy, which include emotional rapport, passion, sexuality, friendship, and affection among women, all common in a little documented Yeoseong Gukgeuk community. And this image is the wedding is the picture. They actually one day they made an event. Actually, it's not a real wedding picture. It's like they made a kind of fan service event with a one um, for one uh, active fan who want to make a wedding photo with the performer. So this is, and then there's sword fighting pictures as a one instance. This is lecture performance, gender fencer. You can still see at the Hakabe website. In the masquerading moments, the artist focuses on the face of the elderly Nimai actor. As they put on a theater makeup, the performer exists as a gender and age fluid being. In work include Unexpected Response 2009 and Masterclass 2010 and Lyric 2 2013, the artist present body transgressive gender performance while video records the actor's training in a masculine acting based on a pansori dance and songs. These works are a precursor to her latest work, which have moved on to the bodies of the pure performer and a performance aesthetic. Pansori is a pre-modern, traditional genre of vocal performance in Korea that was used to recount the national traditional tale in outdoor space or in a banquet room in a traditional houses. In Yeoseong Gukgeuk, it is combined with the Western proscenium theater performance and feature women actors only. The artistic community training in and performing this traditional art embrace non-heterosexual relationship and imagination, enjoying complex gender performance without the discriminatory perspective or exclusions that are based on both confusions and modern heterosexist gender ideology. This fascinating and liberating liminal space arose the powerful imaginary as it transcended the dichotomous ways of establishing boundaries, such as tradition/modernity, and female/male that exist during the Korean transition into a modern society. It is basis of an epistemological break, liberating us from the conception of Asia's traditions and pre-modernity only as illusion or oppression, with the Western positioned as the norm. In other words, siren and Yeongchong's Yeoseong Gukgeuk works recognize and realize tradition as a liberating threshold and a space of the potential intermixing. Such a tradition calls into question relationship of the self-denial, conflict, and antipathy toward the Korean custom, which have previously been seen as colluding with this statism and a heterosexism while maintaining the oppressive narrative of the Confucian patriarchy. Since 2012, Siren and Yeongchong has expanded on her previous methodology in video, creating the outstanding work that had transformed Yeoseong Gukgeuk into contemporary stage performance based on her insight into the practice. In the docu-stage work Upstage, 2012, the image you are seeing now, it was produced with the veteran actor Young-suk Cho. She was a long-time samurai and was a supporting male role in the theater. Recount her involvement in a Yeoseong Gukgeuk and tells anecdotes from her life as a performer, along with a presentation of old photographs. So this is a kind of a documentary performance stage. She also raps and dances and singing, expressing her talents as national intangled culture heritage stillholder. Masterclass, wittingly staged the elusiveness of biological masculinity through a 30-minute performance that dramatized the acting training process based on a representation of the maleness by Lee Jung-woo, a female second-generation actor who has played leading male role along with her pupil. This work a fully fledged occasion for Siren and Yeoseong Chang, not only our elderly actor used to repeatedly performing hackneyed, outdated and conventional narratives, transform into the body of a vivid, non-normative archive on contemporary stage, but the artist herself is expanding her repertoire to work for the theater played at the performance festival across Asia. Anomalous Fantasy is a 1 hour 25-minute theater performance on precarity and deprivations expressed through melancholic confession of the Hyunjin Nam, a young male role actor who succeeded this Yeoseong Gukgeuk earlier generation, oscillating between the frustration and possibility of both the queer camp sensibility and the liberating and non-normative mentality that vibrates within the culture of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk. Artists gradually replace the lethargy of the tradition with the song and dance of the amateur gay chorus. They sing two diverse pieces of the popular music and moving with the sense of empowerment made possible by Yeoseong Gukgeuk and its genealogical imagination. The stage work attempt both reinscribe the minority position of LGBTQI plus people in the center and to clear all norm regarding traditional performance stage as well as a representation of professionalism and the gender. More fundamentally, it ponders the unstable position of Asian tradition and the queer, in particular via Preferred Theater, 2018. Here, the artists confront the personas of the mini park and renowned performer of another Korean traditional singing tradition, Kago, and grappling with the narrow possibility of the granted by tradition. Jaemin, a drag king performer who discovered their authentic self through a curing, and the melancholia and the modulation of the gendered identity of Hyunjin, the remaining male role successor of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk. In doing so, she emphasized the potentiality that the decline and the instability of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk in fact open up. Um, this is also the quote from by the, the text written by artist herself. I'm going to skip the beginning and then read the right column at the bottom from the end, and it's this line. The cure could be in slash stability. When something isn't completely concluded, naturally named, or given authority, that we can create unique kinesthetics. It's a view that rather than by being given a name by authority, we can write our own history by deferring it. Being adrift due to the denial of the one's authority can give way to resistance or mobility. Siren Hyunjin focuses on the curing made possible by the deferred of authority and the non-normative of the discriminative against the position. The artist stresses that she approaches Yeoseong Gukgeuk from the context of the queer performance, not because of the queer identity within the community, but rather because it let us constantly question how queerness can be performed and what its aesthetic as a form and style are. At last, a performing by flash after image velocity and noise is a work that fully addresses the aesthetic of the curing inherited from the Yeoseong Gukgeuk. The performers' bodies are mobilized, and sound and light elements inherent to the medium are pushed beyond their conventional range, which the artist describes as exploiting the medium. The immersive screen on the three walls that completed filled the room amid intriguing sensory stimuli such as vibrating sounds and extremely slow or fast-paced rhythm. Screens smoothly expose the disparate bodily senses and the intriguing disharmony of the performers. In this situation, however, stimuli never exclude the viewer. Rather, the work wonderfully invites them to the moment of being one with the breathing and dancing queer bodies. Caught off guard, we face moments that move our hearts amidst Kirara's music. The sensory overload that siren and Yeongchang's mobilize in this work constitutes a bold, vibrant action toward the campness, unevenness, and toward one's own anomalousness and an enchantment. It is a celebration of one's own non-normativity. Transgender musician Kirara's 135 beat sound collide with or lead the performer's movement, whose perfect or imperfect performing bodies clash with their work. The curing of video draw out a transformative moment to which viewer can naturally surrender together to the beat. One finally comes to the realize that what always is truly make us dance lies nothing else but the emancipatory moment found in utterly anomalous, utterly pure enchantment. Um, I should explain a little bit more about the work of that was showing in a Korean Pavilion, titled "Performing by Flash After Image, Velocity and Noise." Um, So as I told you that, I mean, it has a fictional imaginative pure performance genealogy, starting from the Yeoseong Gukgeuk, second generation performer, Lee to the four different performance contemporary performer. First one is the one that you see through the images, the Iri. Her name is Iri. She's the lesbian actor, and the second one is a drag king Jaemin, and third one is Won. She's the director and a performer um, of the disabled woman theater group Dancing Waste. And then the last one is transgender musician Kirara. The work is showing definitely the position of the others in the society, but also it has a quite overwhelming flow with the light beams and rhythm and very fast speed of the between scenes, and also the sound was definitely reflect of the gender queer positions, the transgender musicians, its own musical practice engaged with this kind of pure position. In this work, well, for artist Siren Yeoseong Gukgeuk, she she's not just insists merely observing the pureness discovered in tradition within the realm of the normality. It's recently when she was working on this work, there was a sort of it's ongoing situation in South Korean society. There was sort of moment to reflect why kind of continuing producing the moment of clearing, and it's important for her. Before actually through the whole research process of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk, she was kind of more focused on epistemological understanding of this kind of gender queer breakthrough of the tradition. But recently, she has some kind of moment to influence also the jazz sphere for text queer time and queer assemblage. And around the time there was some sort of weird phenomenon of the twisted heterosexual or cisgender centered feminism colluding with the neoliberal rights and phobia against the queer and Muslim refugee in Korea. But there was sort of this, around 100 people, Muslim people, arrived from the Yemen as a refugees, and cisgender feminists, mostly the younger generation women, really against to accept them as our citizens. So I'm gonna read some part of my text written for Korean Pavilion catalog to reflect all of this issue. Ineffectively ruminating on such a situation, it is worthwhile setting just your take for its extraordinary arguments in pure time, pure assemblage. As per uh, aforementioned situation in Korea where cisgender radical feminism met neoliberal fame and security issues and ultimately end up serving biological woman-centrism. Or point out the serious paradox in which discourse of the pureness has served the discourse of the US exceptionalism, that is, a sexually exceptional form of American national sexuality through a rhetoric of sexual modernization that is simulate, um, simultaneously able to castigate the other as a homophobic and perverse, and construct the imperialist center as a tolerant, but sexually radically and gendered normal with, within the American counterterrorism strategy. Moreover, Poor also point out how pure exceptionalism often considers the Muslim and homosexual as a mutually exclusive categories, while it works to the suture U.S. nationalism through the perpetual featuring of race from the sexuality, the um, the terrorist sexuality, uh, the race of the terrorist, and the sexuality of the national queer. The way thinking about queer only through sexual oppression as the agency while overlooking the operation of racism, nationalism, and the patriarchy presses one to be on guard against everyone. Therefore, Poor breaks from the assimilation strategy of the pure discourse and instead of affirm and pursues abnormality and a marginalized position, asserting the queer assemblage that question the frame of exclusion which regulate the order of normality through reproduction and pure acceptance. Here, the assemblage that Poor speaks of it related to the feeling, tactility, ontology, affect, and information. In other words, assemblage in its depth to ontology and its as poser of the what cannot be known, seen, or heard, or has yet to be known, seen, or heard, allow uh, for becoming beyond being and beings. Queerness, as the terrorist becoming performed by turban, prevent the very confusing challenges against normative concurrent through the temporal, spatial, and bodily segmentation. Four underscore that only the amplification of queer assemblage which perform not only an opposition against the mode of nationalization, but also queerness as a diaspora from a space of nation, could bypass entirely a continuum that privileged the core of identity as the evolved form of the Western modernity. Was was the artist Siren Unyoung also does not insist on a mere absorbing the queerness discovered in tradition within the realm of normality. In an East Asian society where tradition is actively employed as a nationalist discourse, the queer assemblage that the artist discovered in Yeoseong Gukgeuk and amplified in is in fact a challenge of paradox, taking into account the fact that modernization and patriarchy are closely linked, and also today's situation where certain twist the identity politic degenerated into another voice of the hatred against non-cisgender or refugees. Chung's work triggers and carries a more fundamental experience of the abnormality through a sense and effect, the manifestation and extensions of the queer time. This work presents the performance and bodies of the lesbian, transgender, and a disabled woman who challenge the conventional logic of performance and deploy bodily disharmonies through dissonant yet tactile noise, joint, and severe runs. In her work, The Performing by Flash After Image Velocity and Noise, Chong intentionally makes an immoderate use or even abuse of the media and its physical power in order to subvert its constraints. The work finally invited us to an immersive and overwhelming space for queer assemblage, a strong sensory experience, saturated with the disruptive audiovisual clashes, anomalous textures, asymmetric movements in dissipate bodies, questioning all violence that comes from the pursuit of accordance, the normative normalization, building identity in a sense of integrity. Thank you. This is the end of my reading. And maybe we could move forward the question from Jaemin and Adeena. Hello, Jaemin and Adeena, are you ready to give your question?
Hyunjin, if you stop sharing your screen, I can turn everyone's video on.
Okay.
Is everyone back? Hyunjin, I really want to thank you so much for this really rich presentation. I mean, that was really impressive how you have woven and reconstructed this trajectory between the texts you wrote for Afterall, series of works by siren and jung. And I think we really, despite the flatness of these Zoom webinars, I think we really got a sense of the audiovisual multisensory experience, and also the kind of like multi-perspectivist and immersive experience you get when you actually get to experience and see the work. And yeah, this has been also, you know, you have created this constellation also with all the archives of Yeoseong Gukgeuk. It was really amazing to see also the wealth of research which is behind the work, and we could also really see this the relationship you have with the artist also by sharing all the research material that on which her work is based. And finally, yeah, the way you presented all the exhibition, but also sites for performances, and how this has a potential to renew contemporary queer politics was quite eloquent. So I really want to thank you for this presentation, and even more because because it's very late in Seoul. It's 11 p.m. I believe.
Yes,
but I will leave the floor to Jaemin. I think you have a few questions. So I think everyone would love to hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I also have to thank you and Hyunjin and Roran to organize this event, and then also the presentation by Hyunjin. I was really deeply touched to see all these archival images, and that was really surprising to me. And then also the exhibition, the explanation about your exhibition, and then Siren's work, which also embrace very timely matter these days, concerning about all the feminism, and then the modernity, and the behind story of themselves. So thank you for sharing with us. But I firstly wanted to continue the discussion about the feminism going on in Korea, maybe because lastly you mentioned about this kind of the feminism in, like, radical feminism in Korea, like focused on more like biological women, and then making the discourse around them, not including everyone else maybe. So, and also I think Siren, in a way that she sort of actively engaged in this more like feministic artistic language, but I'm not really sure whether the other artists currently working in Korea or maybe international, they are also following this kind of the feminist artist language, or is it going to change, or are there any histories or backgrounds behind of it? So all sort of this thing, we could start discussing about this.
Yes. Thank you both to initiate all this kind of wonderful online seminar, which is my first time. So I hope it goes well until the end. And to answer the first question of Jaemin, I mean, we have quite a well-known several women artists who actually quite strongly engage with the feminist movement, like Lee Bo in 1990 and Kim Suja, and those two women are internationally also successfully, well-known artists who who's founded their kind of discursive theory behind the work somehow related, I think, the 80s, 90s feminist discourse. In recent years, yeah, I think the more gender diversified perspectives are involved in the practice, not just limited as a feminism. And somehow feminism, it has a strong, foundation to think of the politics and ethics of the other, but in a recent, the couple of years in Korea, as I explained in the last meeting, there is a cisgender centrism. It's really strongly occupied, and it's obviously and we were quite puzzled and then perplexed why the feminism is toward the kind of biological cisgender feminism, but it somehow we realized that it really related to the neoliberal capitalistic economy, and somehow the kids are all grown quite equally these days and educated equally in South Korean society, but then they become realize that the opportunities are not shared the same way between male and women. So the young women become very angry, and this in terms of these kind of opportunity issues, and also another issue, the security issue. So these become there's a phobia around about the Muslim refugee people, and also the rejection of the transgender people. So recently there's a transgender people who want to enter the woman university, and also there's another transgender person who moved from the male army to the female army troop, but he all rejected. And then the all younger woman groups are they are the one who really upset about, like, they are very against about this acceptance. So but I think but if we go to the other artistic examples in the past, I think Adeena already know about this text, and there's a collective, woman collective, Ipkim. They had a very they had a one happening in the park where it was very symbolically patriarchal park, because the old men usually it's the park for the old men, and there's a one pagoda. So it says, I mean, the name of this park is a Tapgol Gongwon, and this Tapgol Gongwon is every day it's occupied by the old men, like over 60s, 70s, and so and the women collective Ipkim, they saw this place as the real, symbol of the patriarchy. So they went there and they made kind of very disturbing performance to these old men, and they announced the manifestations in the park on the day. So so there are some, but these history is also quite not much really known in Korean art history. It's actually somehow Korean art scene and academy, they are we were actually quite failing to establish this feminism and gender studies as a part of this academic studies. So all this kind of history in terms of the feminism and gender discourse are not part of this kind of the art studies in academy, and so in a way we realize that it's there are lack of this kind of educations, even though and also not only our field and in general in many universities and academy, they lacks of this kind of feminism and gender discourse and studies. So and we regret, and somehow the current complicated situation with the radical feminisms, and also, but in another way, there is a positive raising scene of the gender diversity and the gender queer movement, but but those are all kind of self-taught, somehow self-taught, or not through not through the mainstream academic education. So so there are very kind of messy complications around this younger generation argument, and sometimes it become a gender battle between cisgender male and cisgender female these days, and which is very pity to witness.
Yeah, I mean, Siren's works, like I have seen many of this blurred boundary between, you know, male and female from Siren's works. So I think this, like her project and then her works and then this exhibition itself kind of gave us the time to think about why the feminism in Korea somehow, you know, basically lost its driving force and everything. Yeah.
Well, in late 90, actually, it's not only Korea, but it whole the Western society as well. There's a huge fashion of post-feminism, which is like more, you know, we somehow we believe that somehow we achieved the sort of the equality between male and women, and then there's all this kind of celebration of the consumeristic society. So there's a kind of, you know, very media promotion of the images, alpagars, and kind of these career women, and then so there was a sort of you know, I think we kind of believed we sort of can we can move beyond of this kind of earlier feminist movement, but we witnessed it actually in last couple of years through the Me Too movement. We actually it was just gone under, you know, it somehow it was big mistake that the whole society somehow treated the gender equality and equity as a sort of behind the scene. So there are a lot of, the violence was still toward the woman and gender other, that we know that it's not really gone better. So so 90 is somehow 90, the early 90s and until the mid 90s, in together with the globalizations, there's a LGBTQ movements and feminism movement was somehow very celebrated. The first announcement of the gender notion was in 1995 in the fourth Women Congress of the in Beijing. So until the mid 90s, it was very actively expanded and introduced. But then later 90 and early 2000, I think the post-feminism were more dominant. And in our scene, we can also see some of the European post-feminist artists. They are presenting the object of the luxury handbags, making handbags, and using like working together with the fashion model in a very fashionable photographs. And so there are some scene, the woman artists even they they actually indulged into this kind of post-feminism production. So which at the time I really don't like those kind of works, but it somehow it really linked with this kind of the market scenes, and they got highlighted a lot through the market and then global art scene in around 2000.
Okay.
Maybe I'll ask you a question, Hyunjin, and then we will take. We have two questions from the audience, so I think it's a small question. But in the introduction to the catalog of the pavilion you curated, you also mentioned some suspicion by an older female curator in Korea who accused or was suspicious that the project might just serve. I think you write something like Western Orientalist consumption of female bodies, something on these lines. Well, I suppose that's also here. It's about the issue of or the accusation of self-orientalizing the show and the artist. But I suppose it is intertwined with these generational clashes between different waves of feminism in Korea. So yeah, just wanted to ask you to comment on how you have responded or how this might have, created or how this might have given different impulses or reactions from you and the artist.
It's still, we can feel that. I mean, people not really come and speak to discuss about the issue in front of us, but there is some sort of we could sense that there are uncomfortable feeling about seeing the shamanism in Jaemin Cha's work and this Korean costume dance, traditional dance and sirens and etc. I think they're more sensitive about the images rather than what actually it it brings on. So but in 90s and early 2000s, for us, the Orientalism that Western projected onto the Asia or East Asia is all about the labor-intensive production for the art market. So, and also there's a mixture of a little bit of this local or kind of orientalistic taste used within the production, in the process of productions and the objects and or paintings. And but it all creates a very labor intensive intensivity that is seen as like a chief labor for the Western society as well, right? So these kind of handmade, kind of really like a handmade productions with many people, like in 90s Chinese market, art market, and where some, I can say the Indian art market and Korean also. So there are sort of generation who against of this notion of Orientalism in terms of labor intensity production, but the the woman older generation, elderly generation woman curator who commented to me as a um, reproduction of Orientalism, they they kind of ironically is to me like they seems not have any uncomfortable feeling about this labor intensive production. So rather they don't want to present they think like it's they kind of really adopting the Western discourse of the Orientalism. So like the Edward Said Orientalism is the criticism of the Westerners, not just for the like the Asians or like non-Westerners actually. So but they are kind of in um, learning of this discourse, and they sort of bring on the censorship toward them, which all we have this kind of self censorship somehow, like in our critical studies actually, uh, but then it become kind of automatic um, rejection, whatever the sort of Orientalistic or Asian traditional elements used for the the contemporary art. It become quite easily condemned as like a sort of Orientalistic strategies, but these artists are not really nothing really um, working for a market, art market, or anything easily uh, um, uh, absorbed by this kind of Western institutions, etc. So I don't know, like it's a complicated issue. It's somehow through this kind of situation, it will maybe we witness it a certain um, um, uh, so already like the limitation we always have to deal with as a like a non-Western, as a non-Westerner. So like if you think of the canon of the Western in terms of all the critical studies, even like so we as a person not from the Western society who had to gone through all this Western critical discourse, and somehow you operated for toward your own your own background or your own positions, and somehow it always oscillates between this kind of the anti but it's not simple, like because in a way the tradition within the region in Asian region, and somehow it's rather more complex than um, to criticize or to approach through the only this kind of um, the critical discourse of the Orientalism. It's rather there's a space that go beyond of this kind of colonial modern understanding. So in a way, like I think what Siren, Yeoseong Chong, and Jaemin Cha was working on in the exhibition, that brings sort of the like the possibility through the liminality which we can find in the traditions actually. So the liminality that it's not merely one side, but it's the way to go beyond this kind of the border of the modern colonial modern actually. So I don't know whether it's become an answer for you, Adeena. I don't know, but yeah, I'm not sure whether it's the proper answer for you, but
no, that
yeah,
very very complete answer.
yeah, I think yeah, I think I mentioned the water mineral point out that the case of approving and supporting the modernity lies the problem of not seeing or pretending not to see colonialism, which is invisible other half of modernity. Today, the non-Western curator and artists routinely perceive the colonial practice far too often check, and in fact, whether they themselves aren't the operator, either Occidentalism or Orientalism, or question how they could go beyond these two perspectives. So yeah, so will we? I mean, this is the situation we are kind of stuck in a way, and I think I've been working with another artist, Cha Kyung and discuss of these issues. There must be some risk, but in a way, um, thinking and investigating the tradition, it it's somehow giving the way to giving our own archive to the society and the local, the society also. So yeah, and I think the context of the work, it doesn't really simply producing this kind of orientalist, realistic perspective. So I don't think um, a certain critical view to the exhibitions that are really valid in the end.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe because I mean, it's already 3:30, but we will go a bit over time. So we can take the 3 questions from the audience, which I will read. So first question from Kirsty P. So thank you for your question. Thanks again for your presentation, Hyunjin. Building on Jaemin's question, I was wondering what your opinion is on whether intersectional feminism has a place in South Korea, given the lack of acceptance of the LGBTQIA community, etc. Thank you.
Sorry,
I think you can also read.
Sorry, I
can you read?
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Building on Jaemin's question, I was wondering what your opinion is on whether intersectional feminism has a place in South Korea, given the lack of acceptance of the LGBTQIA community, etc.
Yeah, I think there are space, but I think in general, like this LGBTQIs and intersexual with like a gender fluid or there are actually I think there are some spaces, and obviously the sort of the industry, like the fashion industry, they're more reacted actually toward it. But the recent LGBTQI movements are very shifting from the older the way of the bordering each other. I mean, before in 90, their lesbian group and gay community, the associations are somehow do not go well each other, even in the community. But these days, I think that this kind of border between any kind of gender differences are blurring and not really strongly regimented within the whole gender queer community. yeah, I don't, yeah. And, but only the problem is this, the cisgender feminist, uh, they're they're against of the transgenders and any other kind of gender queer petitions.
Okay, I think that answers. I hope, Kirsty. And then we have a question from Say. Thanks for the talk. This might be a general question, but I'd like to still ask you. I'm glad that there are more and more diverse voices growing in South Korea these days, whether it being related to feminism or gender issues. Yet the systematic problems of hierarchy and the gaps between Generation X and the millennial is a big problem. How do you think about this problem? And if there is a hope in institutions, what role could they take? What could or should be changed?
Well, institution, I think they are struggling to understand this millennial generation's reactions. I actually don't know much what is sort of the programs or new any kind of ideas are um, suggested from this kind of institutions, but actually there are daily base of the treat for the women in South Korean society because of this recent, for example, recent ends room case that is telegram-based sexual violence and abuse even under 16-year-old. So and I hear that like many younger generation women saying they really feel the like a treat of their life in everyday life. So it seems, and it's also because of all these um, sexual moving image circulation industries, which is huge in South Korea, and then the juridical cases are they never helped to make a better examples. So in Korea, the juridical cases, the sentence is very low for even for the pedophile moving image circulator. So so the anthem, the recent anthem become one of the rupture. I think it become one of the rupture for the society to think about this problem of the juridic system. So the institution at the moment, I think the activists, they're working toward to change of these juridic cases, the examples of this the high rate sentence, like more like even 20 years sentence to jail for the crimers. Before it was only 2 year or even 1 year or some several months sentence to jail. That was all for this kind of very serious crime case. So that's a really important thing, and some of the activists and lawyers and they're working on it. I think this is the way actually to change the society, and then maybe then after that, I think the millennial feminist, radical feminist group, they would open differently, but without any feeling of the daily base of the death rate, So yeah.
Okay, I hope this answers your question, Say. And the third question from an anonymous attendee. Hi, Hyunjin. I was lucky enough to see the exhibition at ARCO, and it was amazing. I wanted to say first, thank you for your effort to organize the exhibition. I'm just wondering what was your difficulties to curate Siren's same work for the ARCO Museum compared to the Korean Pavilion in Venice. Also, as a curator, how did you hope to audience the audience to read differently Siren's work in your show compared to the MMCA, the Museum of Modern Art in Seoul, compared to MMCA's Korea Artist Prize in 2018, in terms of her work, which is generally focusing on Yeoseong Gukgeuk?
I think the Siren presented all different version of her researches onto the over the Yeoseong Gukgeuk. But with me, actually, we're lucky to get together. We could have a lucky moment to bring on a new way of her work. For example, 2012. Her first stage performance was commissioned and curated by me, actually, the offstage and masterclass. So I mean, as a curator for myself, like it's important to reveal sort of different potentiality of the artist, and then translate into the new form of the work. So for me, that was the theater. But before, Steven was working on a video, moving images, and through the interview and with interview of this early generation of the Yeoseong Gukgeuk performers. But then, you know, they are the one who performing, and then there's a way we could actually test out the pure performance through the performativity on the stage. So that was the first time, and then this time, I was understandable. I was understanding her. She has certain kind of self-reflections, whether how. I mean, she's been already 10 years in the Yeoseong Gukgeuk research, so she was constantly thinking what kind of work could come after this Yeoseong Gukgeuk research, but how it can be bridged from the previous practice. So this time she come up with this idea of making a imaginative genealogy. And for the Venice Biennale Korean Pavilion, it was very tight space, so we could actually use the one existing room, the very confined room, but it was somehow giving more immersive experience to the audience with the loud sounds that you can actually feel in through the also air and space. But in the Arco Art Center, it's a large space. We have a lot of freedom to work on, but due to the limitation of the budget, but also Siren and I was discussing how to reduce the environmental waste, because we found out there's by the building the walls, there are a lot of waste after the exhibition. So we decided to use the curtain instead of the building four-sided the wall, and then use the headset. So it somehow reduced the experience of the sound, because the headset experience is totally different, and it doesn't bring any kind of like ambience, like a space ambience sound, and with a strong button, sound. So yeah, so there's differences between two exhibitions, but we were kind of tested at two different versions, but in a way, like I think that I and artists prefer the Venice Biennale Korean Pavilion for her work.
Okay. I don't know, Jaemin, if you have a quick question, but I suppose we should conclude very soon. Or comment or.
I mean, I had a few more questions, but I can actually look into more maybe later on. But I was really, it was very great experience for me to actually encounter Siren's work with Hyunjin's work. And then also, I have to admit that this is first time for me to Zoom conference event. So it was very much, I enjoyed. I mean, I haven't really asked about other questions I had, but I think from Hyunjin's presentation, I got a little bit of answers with these, you know, the timing of this emergence of Yeoseong Gukgeuk, and then also the transition of Siren's artistic practices, like from images, videos to the more performances, and then what is the significance about it. So I think Hello. I think.
Are you back?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. That's all I have to say now.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. If I can add just one more thing for the last question, the summon questioning. I think for Siren, it's you know, I think I briefly mentioned that she was more enjoying, and she was really indulged into the getting to know about this Yeoseong Gukgeuk's history. But after the tenure, she realizing, and also the circumstances of recent societies or complicated situations about the gender issues, and she want to continue the language of the curing in the aesthetic of her works, and a theatrical and also video work, and it's for her, it's the way of the go into the deeper of the ontological ontological knowing of what is the curing through this sensory experience and effect that we can actually experience going through the work. So these are the thing that I think this Siren will continue, I believe, and hope you would actually, if someone go to the Düsseldorf, she's having a solo exhibition there. Inspiring, so you could maybe see some of her works and thank you, and for it's getting 12 for midnight.
Yeah. Yeah, we should conclude, but yeah, I really want to thank you both again, and well, I was really happy because I think you really embraced the invitation to discuss, you know, the relationship between the writing, the exhibition, and everything that's transversal to the work, and in fact, when you because I saw the show in Venice, which was always so packed. I must be honest, I have very fragmented memories of the Korean Pavilion, but when you showed the clip from the exhibition at Arco, what came back were the words you used to describe the work in your opening paragraph in your article in Afterall. So I think that you really managed to do that and move between all these different registers very beautifully. So I really want to thank you again, and Jaemin also for you. I thank you again also for you really for joining the conversation and collaborating on organizing the event. And well, finally, thank you to the audience and to all my colleagues at Afterall. It was also our first public Zoom event, and very glad we were able to host you, and that the issue is a reality finally, and this should reach you very soon. So thanks again, and see you soon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.